G'day wrestling mates. So this is episode 29 and it's called Would You Believe? Would you believe that a genuine legend of the wrestling business left me a personal voice message as to why they couldn't do an interview with me? Stick around to find out who that legend is and what message was left for me. Also, would you believe that I am a registered affiliate marketer of genuine WWE merch from WWE.com? Now, stick around for a code, a bit of shilling, and a demo of the difference using our code can make to your entry into WWE shopping and a quicker and more pleasant shopping experience. And it helps this channel. In this episode, I'm also going to give a generic and somewhat sarcastic description of some wrestlers. I'll then give you a 3-2-1 countdown to guess who they are and, of course, reveal the answer and whether they really got over or not. Who truly gets over and who gets what push and when is a never-ending discussion, especially if it's a discussion between old schoolers like myself and the current generation of fans. It's also interesting if you want to dissect why a wrestler gets over in one company, but not so much in another. Let's get the opener revved up and we'll set the table. G'day wrestling mates, welcome to episode 29 of If You See Kayfabe. I'm your host, your wrestling mate from down under. I'm SouthernJoe. This episode is called Would You Believe? For example, would you believe that I am actually a registered affiliate marketer of WWE merch, the genuine stuff? The link is below and it will also be in the description. More on that in the break. Would you also believe that my newest wrestling mates, Alpha Pro Wrestling, are having two big anniversary shows coming up? They'll be this Saturday the 9th. Now, since the episode before the last one being the one where I interviewed Alpha Pro top draw wrestler, the escape artist Matty Wild, I did go and see them at a nighttime show that was only $15 to get into. It was at Pipeworks Market, which is in Thomastown, here in the northern suburbs of Melbourne. It was very entertaining, and once again, everything was easy to follow as far as storylines go. The moves were good to great, and every wrestler and even managers made every attempt to connect with the audience. There were obvious regulars who knew who the players were, and they reacted accordingly. In the main event, the Slim Reaper, Mike Chaos, defeated the mercenary Slade Mercer by disqualification, meaning that Mercer is still the Alpha Pro heavyweight champion. This was after Mercer belted the ref. The commissioner then booked a Falls Count Anywhere in the Building match for the end-of-year card, which will happen on December 7. One match that surprised me was this battle of absolute behemoths, and they actually put on a good show for two big blokes. The 7-foot-tall, 500-pound Indian giant known only as Desh defeated the 6'11", 320-pound South Australian skyscraper Colossus in a true clash of the titans. Now, there's two shows happening this Saturday, November 9, as we record. There's the Arvo show that starts at noon, and that's free to enter. And that will feature Matty Wild looking to take the Alpha Pro Energy Cup from Dangerous Pete Morgan. And as per Matty Wild's world exclusive, in my last episode where I interviewed the escape artist, that match will be a tables match. Then there's the evening show starting from 7 p.m. with tickets starting at $10 for kids and $15 for adults. So get stuck in. Now, before we talk about Would You Believe, let's talk about who left me that personal message. Now, in the short time I've done this show, I've had meet and greets that turn into mini interviews with Jab from Mayhem Pro, Sid Parker and Erica Reed, and the big legend himself, Bret the Hitman Hart. These were all at Starcast Down Under back in April. I've also had the privilege of interviewing Aussie legend Ken the Dazzler Dunlop, as well as a behind the scenes insight of one of the true greats of world pro wrestling, Harley Race, which was via his son Justin Race. I've been chasing some other interviews. I'm not afraid to ask because the worst answer I can get is no. I'm waiting to hear back from a couple of people and I'm looking to approach some others. One person who said no, but was nice enough to take time and send a personal message explaining why they couldn't do it. Well, here is that message now.
SouthernJoe, I just saw this. It went to my spam. I thank you for the wonderful message here. My problem is I don't have time to do any podcasts. Totally bogged down with Sportskeeda work, a day job, and my family. But if I can give you any advice, it's keep focused on what you're doing. Love what you're doing, and you'll be around as long as me, and maybe even longer, brother. Thank you.
That was, in fact, the man behind the Kayfabe type mags of our childhoods, Mr. Bill Apter, who was editor-in-chief of Pro Wrestling Illustrated and its sister publications. He was the well-known public face of those mags, so much so that PWI and its range became known as the Apter mags. Now, Mr. Apter could have just typed a generic no as an answer, or do like some have done and not respond at all. But Mr. Apter showed true class with his heartfelt message for me. Thank you very much. And who knows, maybe down the track he'll change his mind and be interviewed by an Aussie. Bet he hasn't had too many Aussie interviews. Now, wrestlers have tried to protect the authenticity of pro wrestling as a legitimate sport for many decades. The pressure mounted the most on them in the 80s when people like John Stossel tried to expose the business. Eventually, the wrestling business relented and said, yeah, it's all a work. Now, you'll probably know the full story of all of that, but that's not the believability factor we're talking about here. You see, when talking about who's over and who's not, the only real metrics are physical ones like merch sales, ticket sales, and the TV ratings, especially now with quarter-hour breakdowns. So it'll be time for a break, but before we do, let's have a warm-up from outside of wrestling, just so you get the gist and see if this premise would get over in pro wrestling. Some of you may have heard me mention this in an earlier episode, but for you newbies out there, give this one a go. All right, so you got this frail, short old man. He's from another country, comes to America as a job, and during the course of his work, he strikes up a friendship with a young lad who is new in town. Now, as this young lad is being beaten up by a bunch of bullies, this frail old man beats all of them up. Oh no, by the way, the 5 bullies are all young men who are proficient in martial arts. In fact, the lead bully is a 3-time state champion in said martial art. The old man then trains the newbie to that tournament, and this is despite the old man having no formal training in how to train others. By the way, his young trainee, with hardly any martial arts experience, beats the 3-time champ and becomes state champ. Believable? Yes? No? Know what I'm talking about? Yes, I'm talking about the character Mr. Miyagi. Now, I love the Karate Kid movies, but how many of you watched the Karate Kid movies and believe this was possible? Yet, if a similar premise was done on AEW, it wouldn't seem feasible. And I hate that, he doesn't look like he could whip cream with an outboard motor type argument. But this is what fascinates me now, like with so many people seeing titles as props. instead of looking at title matches as the pinnacle of a card, and just because we want the next internet darling to have their turn. In real life, it's not the size of the dog in the fight, it's the size of the fight in the dog. Let's have a break and play Would You Believe on the other side of this break. Many people want to make sure they get proper WWE merch. Now, there are two ways this can be done, and I'll show them to you now. Now, see here, firstly, you can type in WWE in your search bar, go to the shop link, just like it shows in this demonstration. Or, in this demonstration, use this code and go directly into the shop itself. Yes, it helps the channel. Please use the code and help a wrestling mate. Welcome back to If You See Kayfabe. So let's start with this one. Picture a man who wrestled in the 1950s and 60s. He wore very effeminate clothing, and the people of the time questioned whether he was strong enough to compete. He deodorized the ring because he thought his opponents didn't smell as perfumed as he. But he annoyed fans of that time even more so because he could actually wrestle. Here's some thinking music. Who do you think this is? Of course, I'm talking about Gorgeous George. He probably wouldn't stick out as much today, as amongst them there's openly gay wrestlers and there are also other androgynous wrestlers. But his gimmick got over back then because he was the first to break the mold of what a bad guy wrestler could look like. Basically, heels back then were mean and generally ugly. There was a clear delineation between a face and a heel. But George broke that mould, by George. Pardon me. Let's try an easier one. Now, this guy was big and tall, but there were bigger and taller guys. He was muscular, but there were those with larger muscles. He was strong, but there were those that were stronger. There are also those that could move better than him and had a bigger repertoire set of moves. His finishing move looked less devastating than others, but he was a champion. So who am I thinking of? Yes, it's actually Hulk Hogan, one of the biggest stars of all time. But what made him such a star? Well, above all else, he had that intangible it factor, charisma. Everything I said in the build-up was true. But let's look at another big guy. This guy was the same height as Hogan, almost as muscular, but this guy could move faster than Hulk. He was really fast. He was also considered by many ladies to be better looking. Was he a star? And who am I thinking of this time? I'm thinking of Mike Awesome. I thought this guy had the potential to be a lot more than what he was pushed as. Now, also, unfortunately, Mr. Awesome took his own life in 2007 at just the age of 42. Now, I don't know what demons he had, if any, but may God have mercy on his soul. Now, here's another big guy. Bigger than Hogan, but smaller than folks like Andre and Big Show. Not as muscular, but looked like a strong guy. He, in fact, lifted two wrestlers over his head at the same time to win an over-the-top battle royal. He weighed more than Hogan, but could move like a man half his size. He had a very unique look and connected with the audience. Who can this guy be? This is Bam Bam Bigelow. Now, I love the way he moved around the ring, and his look was so good and so unique. Now, but I think he was in the mould of Stan Hansen, Bruiser Brody, and Terry Funk, business-wise, as he was very much a journeyman and set his own agenda. Hence, he never stuck around a company long enough to truly fulfill the potential that I reckon he had. But unfortunately, it's another one we have to say rest in peace to. All right, one last one. Going back to the 1970s, this wrestler had a classic wrestler's build. He was a regional champ and was so well thought of by none other than Harley Race that Harley allowed this man to pin him clean on TV in a non-title match. This was while Race was world champ and at the top of his game. But the wrestler I'm thinking of never got the push that one might have thought he would have got after such a prestigious win. This time it is Australian legend Ron Miller. Miller was a prolific technical wrestler, was rugged, and could brawl. He wasn't over the top promo wise, but his promos were believable, his overall style convincing. Yet he didn't make it to the US till later in his career and was never a champ of any significance, although he should have been world stage wise. Now, also thinking of the late great Bruiser Brody and his independent minded scheduling, I wonder why he never at least had a run of matches with Hogan in WWF. It would have been a banger of a feud. Now, we could go on for days like this, but this gives you some insight into what makes a star. It's not just their physical attributes, but whether they have it factors, charisma, and how they get pushed and whether the audience buys that push. Please make comments on what you think in the comment section down below. It'd be interesting to hear what you think. Till next time, this is your wrestling mate from down under. This is Southern Joe saying hooroo.